Welcome to the very first Innovators in Education web series. Our purpose is simple here. We want to collect and share the great things that are happening in the classrooms across the country and hopefully eventually across the world. We're sitting here in the Green Screen Studios at North in the Lorain County ESC, and this programming is made possible from a grant from the Nord Family Foundation. And more than just the grant, I think it's the shared philosophy of really helping to spread the word of great things. Our format's going to be pretty conversational. Think of us like a 21st century fireside chat. We're going to talk educational philosophy, practicality, and dissect what it really takes to start making a difference in education. Throughout this series, our guiding theme is going to be student-owned learning. Everyone we sit down with has unlocked a different formula for meaningful learning in today's schools. We want to be able to share that with our viewers, and we want you to take the best parts, take that back to your schools, and really become agents for change. If we can't change what we're doing, then we're not really being impactful. And today we're lucky enough to be here with Garth Holman. Garth currently teaches at Beachwood Middle School. He's a 7th grade world history teacher. And he's really created a classroom where students own their own learning. And he's done that through meaningful tech integration through the past several years. I was fortunate enough to student teach with Garth almost 9 years ago. It's been a long time. And then continued to work and collaborate with Garth at my time in Chardon, and now he's followed me to North. I've pulled him back in. If you want to tweet us today, there's about a 10-second delay in the stream from what we talk, but I'll keep Twitter open on the iPad, and we'll try to answer some questions if they come in. You can also follow us later if you need to do that as well. We're going to post these and archive them online. So, Garth, why don't you do a little bit more of an introduction about what you've done over the past few years at Beachwood?
Well, first I want to thank North for having me here today, and also thank the Nord Family Foundation for providing the funds to be able to do this series. And I want to thank Beachwood City Schools for allowing me the time to come here and be a part of this discussion. So, my name is obviously Garth Holman. I teach at Beachwood. I've taught 7th grade social studies for 22 years now, predominantly in Ohio, but I did 5 years in Syracuse, New York. And so we got laptops at Beachwood approximately 10 years ago. We were the first one-to-one district in the state of Ohio. So I've used laptops and technology in my classroom to engage learning for quite a long time. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know walking in as a student teacher to Garth's room was very eye-opening. All the things in my methodology class became very obsolete very quickly because of the ubiquitousness of the tech. And today I really want to try to focus us down. It's hard for Garth and I to focus when we get talking, to the 3 ideas that are on the screen. So legacy, perspective, and leadership/ownership are really going to be our themes of conversation today. Most of those are definitely going to revolve around technology integration, and I'm going to start big picture, and we're going to narrow it down so that we can really talk about some tools that teachers can use in their classroom to make this work starting Monday or whenever testing happens to end in your room. So the first question, Garth, is probably the biggest one, and that is why do we need this change in the dynamic of teaching and learning? Well, I started really thinking about how this played out, reading Dan Pink's book, Drive. And he talked a lot about trying to motivate people versus trying to inspire people. And as a middle school teacher, I have 12 to 14-year-olds, depending on the range where they're at, that want to be inspired. And they want to be inspired to do unique and amazing things. So I looked at Dan Pink's framework and kind of thought about that idea that people are driven when they have autonomy, that they can get mastery, and it has passion. They have passion for what they're doing. So, 9 years ago, we kept talking about how do we engage kids, how to create passion, and there was this new idea of how technology might be able to change that. So when you were a student teacher with me, we talked about this idea, how can we engage kids in content in a meaningful way? And we came up with this idea of having our kids create their own student-created online textbook for kid use. Yep. And we spent 7 years ultimately, and it's still in the process of being built. But we have about 1,600 kids have participated. They've added multiple movies that they've made, so the documentaries are made by kids. As you can see on the screen behind us, I have a digital refrigerator where the kids are picking what is the best work from all the students over the years to expose to a larger audience. We've interviewed people all over the world. I'm just a 7th grade social studies teacher. I am not an expert on 15th century Italian literature. So our students are able to reach out via the web to interview with people all over the world. We've been interviewed in LA in a live studio audience, and the students were involved in that, talking about this book. So it all kind of went back to 9 years ago. How do we truly engage kids in content and give them the power to have passion, autonomy, and mastery of what they were doing?
So man, where to start with all of that? Because that really is a lot, I think, for a normal teacher to handle. And I think one of the big points that you brought up that I want to just segue into real quick off my notes is not being able to be an expert in everything at one time. For you as a teacher, how has technology maybe helped make you better by opening your door just as a professional?
Well, I think the first thing is I just watch my own house. I watch my wife. I watch my kids. We're watching a TV show, and somebody says something on a show, and I'm like, who is that person? And we're on an iPad, or we're on a computer Googling it to find out. It just totally opens the doors of learning. Anywhere, anytime, technology gives us the ability for kids to go beyond a textbook and a classroom and learn about the world around them. So for me, I think that happened a long time ago. I think there was a fundamental shift in the way I saw what teaching and learning was, probably 8 or 9 years ago, when you were a student teaching.
Yep.
How can we do things differently with the resources that we have available? And from there, we just continued to develop that idea that kids can do amazing things when given the opportunity. And so it became more of a shift of what does it mean to teach, is where the real issue came in. How do you give kids ownership and give them the chance to be autonomous and give them the chance to have control over their learning? And that's where the approach of education came in. And you know, I've done a lot of reading on the constructionist ideals and how that philosophy helps understand how kids learn and brain development, what they can and cannot do.
And I think that's a good point is we're talking about teachers that are teaching curriculum. We don't want really techie teachers that just happen to also be a math teacher or a social studies teacher. And I think the one thing that we both found out in our classrooms when we started integrating more technology, especially at Chardon, where the more work I did, the more technology came in, and it wasn't really a piece of that culture in the district yet, was how do you prepare kids for that type of learning environment? And for us, it really came down to using the first 6 to 7 weeks of school to set the stage. And the stage really was these 3 ideas: legacy, perspective, and ownership. And I'd like you to just talk for a little bit, Garth. Maybe we can start with just the idea of legacy and kind of tackle these one at a time and talk about how we start the year with this and how that sets you up for success.
Well, the first day of my class, as the kids come in, there's a quote up on the room as they walk in, and that quote was written by a 7th grader 4 years ago. And if you Google the quote, it's referenced to him all over the web. Yeah. And we start with that, and we talk for probably 5 minutes. Why would I start you with a quote from a 7th grade kid? First, I ask them who it's from, and they're like, it's an author, it's a, it's a famous, blah, blah, blah. They have all these answers, and in the end, I say, well, it was from a 12-year-old sitting in this room 2 years ago. So from day one, we do really, I don't do any rules, procedures. We don't go over any of that. We start day one with this idea that class is about you. It's not about me. It's not about content. I'm in the job of teaching people, not teaching content. And so it's all about kids and building these relationships. So on the first day, we spend a lot of time trying to get the kids to move around the room. They're doing fun stuff. They're drawing. A blurry image is, in essence, what they're trying to draw with chalk. And through that process, I try to get them to understand about perspective and that work, sometimes you never really see the clear picture of what you're studying. And that's a lot like history.
Sure.
And so for the kids that night, they come back in. A lot of them talk about that the next day. This is kind of like history to me. It's always blurry. So I'm trying from the first day to get them to understand that what we're going to do in here is going to revolve around you as the learner. Not the content, not me as the teacher, but it's about you as a student.
So you're kind of anti-Harry Wong, who came out with a pretty famous book a couple years ago that was very directly set up to make sure that teachers did rules and procedures, and that. So I don't want to say it became like military boot camp.
Wongified.
But it was wrong to do.
Well, actually, one of the most famous posts or the most, I guess, hit posts on our professional website is Harry Wong's "Not for Me" on the first day of school.
Yeah.
It gets lots of hits, but it kind of explains what we did or what I do and how I get there. But that is just the beginning. I mean, that is a one-day process. But my students go home the first day, and they love class. They are so excited about what we're doing from day one. And so if you think back to that old concept of first impressions.
Yep.
I made a first impression with my students where I think from the beginning, my students would do almost anything I asked. by day 2.
Sure.
If I tell them we're going to try something crazy, they're willing to try it now because they've seen that. And really, by day 3, we do what you see on the screen behind us.
Yeah.
So on the 3rd day of school, you know, we do a quick thing on Hadoken, which is a reference to an old video game, you know, from the 80s, I guess. And I talked to them about perspective again. So we're talking about content, but we're really not. We're talking about you as an individual, seeing the world with new eyes. And so on the Hadoken, we'll take them outside. In the first 3 days, we're out there, and they have to figure out how to visually represent things that aren't really happening.
Okay.
You know, so on this picture, you know, I'm jumping pretty high. If you can see that, I'm up over the stop sign, and you know, I'm really probably about 2 inches off the ground. But it does give the impression that's the idea of Hadoken. Well, there's hundreds of kids' photos.
Yeah.
You know, on that day after school, I think I got 15, 20 tweets from different kids that said the best day of school ever. You know, those kind of things where we've sold them on the idea that school is not just a worksheet, and school's not just sitting at a screen. There's more to it than that. And these things all help us. The technology is going to help us. Maybe doing the worksheets are going to help us. But there's more to it than that. And there's a broader picture out there.
This is a really great question that just came in on Twitter. When we talk about special ed kids and teaching inclusion, which you do you really think that this helps engage those students that really have a negative sense of what school is because of the rules and the procedures that start the year? I mean, now teachers, at least in Ohio, have SLOs, so we're testing kids right away, and they're tests that they're set up, I don't want to say to fail, but they're supposed to be on material that you don't understand. So taking kids outside and treating them like actual people, ignoring the technology, ignoring the curriculum, is it worth the time, I think, is what most teachers would probably ask.
Okay, I think you had multiple questions there.
I know, I was on a rant.
Let me start with the
that
back
now.
one, and then you have to re-ask the first one.
Okay, we'll go
On the
slow.
back end,
We'll go
absolutely,
slow.
it's worth your time. When you can engage kids in meaningful work and they become excited, you're no longer trying to motivate them every day to do something. They become inspired to do things because they want to achieve success. And they see something different than success of a piece of paper. The one thing about technology that changes everything is when kids give me work, it is not, give me a piece of paper. It's publish your work. And they're publishing to the web. And as you see on there, and this is that legacy concept I think we'll probably get to more, but when you have kids that have 78,000 views on YouTube of their work in 2 years, that's a real there's much more inspiration and motivation there than me reading a paper and handing it back and them tossing it, or putting it on their refrigerator at home and mom sees it. So we're changing the whole dynamics there. Now, if we go back to the special ed question, I might have to have you ask that again.
So do you think that helps your special ed students pull them in or help them be more successful as the year goes on, to not jump right into curriculum? And
I think it gives my special ed students buy-in from the first day.
Okay.
They see me as a real guy who cares about who they are and what they're about.
Sure.
You know, I have a great special ed teacher, Michelle Bissett, who works with me. And we talk a lot those first 3 weeks, and the vibe that she gets from the kids is like, you know, they see you as a real man who cares.
Yep.
And I think that's what everybody always says. We've got to you know, we have to create relationships with kids. All philosophical stuff says that. I think we get so caught up in content, and oh my God, the park test is only, you know,
3 weeks away.
away. We've got content to cover. That by day 2, we're trying to cover content instead of building those relationships. If you build those relationships and it takes you 3 to 4 weeks, I will make all that time up and more.
Sure.
Because kids are willing to do more for me in my classroom. And I think that's a pretty common theme. There are kids maybe that don't, a few.
Yeah.
But I think most kids, 80, 90% of the kids, will do more. And by the way, I don't assign homework really. And they'll still do more homework at home.
Sure, because once they know they have a perspective and that their perspective isn't wrong and they can work into those things.
And people are seeing their work, true people, and they're getting feedback from others. Totally changes what's happening.
And I think that leads well into the idea of legacy. And on the back monitor here, we'll pull up in a second, I just took some snapshots from some of the different websites and YouTube videos and places that our students have been able to publish their work to. And it really is, we talk a lot about authentic audience in language arts class. And when you write your paper that you're writing for your teacher, you're supposed to pretend like it's an authentic audience. And Garth's really found a way to give them an actual authentic audience. And that's transcending the curriculum now. It's not just a history thing. It's language arts teachers are starting to pick up on this. I know in Chardon, I worked with my language arts teacher, Christy Ryan, and she would start to grade the students' work on their blog so that professional look that they had as being a published 7th grader really took on and took some steam. And as I look at my monitor, I mean, tens of thousands of views. The Teachers for Tomorrow website, where we talk about this stuff, over 100,000 views. We have a student here whose YouTube video on the Renaissance is almost at 100,000 views. That was in 2011 in April. Online textbook, 17,000 views. You have some other views here. We were lucky enough to do an interview once on YouTube with Ashton Kutcher's company. And you show a 7th grader that Ashton Kutcher is tweeting about their work, and talk about buy-in and legacy.
What's more important is what he tweeted. He's like, brilliant, a wiki textbook for kids.
Yeah.
The idea that we are giving kids the control, and I think that's where it's all coming from. We talked about creating some passion in kids, maybe changing the way they're viewing the class at the beginning, but then you open the doors as you progress. You're giving them legacy. They're giving them the opportunity to make work that they are proud of. And that's something over and over and over again that I ask my kids in survey throughout the year. Are you proud of the work you just accomplished? They're always proud of what they do because they're in control of what they're doing. And I think I've explained it a lot. I still am teaching to standards. I still have Common Core. I still have all these things. It's
still public school. We're still living in the real world of education.
But what we're building for kids with the assignments we build as the year progresses, we're building a house. We're building a frame. And when you look at ours, it's that framed of the house, and there's nothing else there. There's no shingles, there's no roof, there's no windows, but there's a frame of a house. And those are our standards and the requirements that are required by the state of Ohio. And then from there, that's when the kids become the builder. They construct knowledge. They're the ones making the movies. They're the ones writing the blogs. They're the ones that are doing all that. So they're the ones that make all that. It becomes leadership and ownership for them.
See how I segue you? I'm so good.
You do. You're good. You're very good. And then the kids are able to have authentic experiences because we have blog buddies over distance. So that when you were at Chardon, it was the students from Chardon who were reading Beachwood students' work and commenting, and they're providing feedback. When you left the classroom, then Travis Armstrong from Dublin, down near Columbus, kind of contacts, said, I've been watching what you're doing. I'd love to be a part. So now his students are reading the blogs of the kids from Beachwood, and those two kids or these students are forming relationships over distance. So I think we'll talk about a little more as we progress.
Let's break into that real quick, because you mentioned no homework before and the idea of legacy and kids doing work. Do you find that when you move from the motivation of a grade or the punishment of a grade to giving kids this ownership, the image that's up there right now, I should probably do a little background. At the beginning of the year, Garth has his students write the essential questions that are going to lead his class. So kids are able to brainstorm, come up with questions they care about, not questions that were pre-made by someone who already knows them. And slowly over a week or so, the kids are able to move those questions into things that are going to go back to the curriculum in your classroom, so that you're constantly hitting on things kids are interested in. Do you think that publishing online, having that big audience, and having these questions that the kids wrote, does that change the amount of work they do and why they do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fundamentally, from the start, when they're creating their own questions, and this was part of that 6 weeks you talked about, we do a lot of trust building, we do Hadoken, we do these things, then we go into essential questions. By the time kids come to middle school, we've trained them not to ask questions.
Yep.
And you go into almost any classroom in America, and the kids, for the most part, don't ask questions. So we try to train the kids to go back to that. When we're little, we ask questions about everything. We try to understand the world around us. So we train the kids to do that, and we go through a series of questions until the kids pick some that we think, or that they think, can be answered in the content we're going to teach. So these kids then proceed to use those questions to guide instruction the rest of the year. What that's doing is giving them ownership. Then we still do the mastery learning, right? There's those things of autonomy, mastery, that have to be built in. So we still do a traditional mastery, multiple choice test, short answer test. We're doing the things that are required for the kids to be successful by the state of Ohio and the Common Core. But we take it way beyond that. That is the minimum for us. What becomes most interesting is the blog. They're keeping their own blogs, and that is the extension. And the blogs are typically graded in my room on a real basic idea. Do you have a blog done when it's due?
Sure.
Okay, you get some points. You've shown mastery of content. I know you know. This is where you explore and delve in and explain and go way beyond what the state standards are saying you need to know. How do these things impact your life? How do they relate to the world you live in? How do these help you see your world? And walking down your high school hallway, how can you see the Middle Ages around you today? their blogs are phenomenal. And they raise those questions and they draw those connections. And they begin to put themselves into the blogs. They empathize with people from 1,000 years ago.
It's my favorite educational word, by the way, empathy.
Right? They begin to empathize and they begin to understand what it might be like to have lived there. And they also begin to understand how the world is maybe progressed consistently and then went back and progressed, but that everything we have in this room is somehow related to the ancient Greeks and Romans and Chinese, and that the world is a process of building upon what came before. So
let's focus this down and get down to the nitty-gritty of ways to actually do this in your class and implement it. And I'm going to put the image up in the background here of this idea of team teaching over distance. So we're not worrying about who's across the hall from you or when are your classes, but I think this is a really good way to start into some of these practical tools. And if you, Garth, could talk about one or two things, because we don't want to put 50 best tools and apps to change education out there, but what are really like the two things that teachers could do Monday, that they could take the weekend, organize something, and then really make something work?
Well, I think, okay, first you have to precede that with, are you a novice at tech, using tech?
Yeah.
Or are you someone who has a pretty good skill of using tech? There's a couple of things. I would recommend that there's one up there that I think can fundamentally change teaching and learning in the everyday classroom. The first thing, on the left, we'll talk about that image first a little bit. I hope that's your left, but it's the one with just the images of the Skype classrooms. So we have a window of the world open every day with the classroom, but this would be your mystery Skype.
Yeah,
mystery Skype
really
is something
big thing
you
right
can
now.
do. Now, we aren't doing mystery Skype in this, but the concept of mystery Skype is to bring in someone from a distance, whether it be me in Beachwood or a teacher in Florida that you may know, and have them lead the kids through a series of clues, kind of like a 20 questions. Where are you located?
The old Where in the World is Carmen in San Diego.
Yeah. That's an easy thing they could do. Another one that we don't have pulled up necessarily here that I think would be an easy one for people to do is a quick review game that really engages kids called Kahoot, if you haven't seen that. Just Google Kahoot, and it's a game-based learning activity from the UK. 4 women made this game, which I think is cool. I make sure my girls in my classrooms know that women made this game, and it's a big
I guess they were talking about coding and all that stuff,
and also talking about career development. And they're writing historical fiction in our class, and so I share with them, the top books in historical fiction, and they kind of think about how much money these people might be making with these books. But I'm trying to show them the careers, which is Common Core, which is this common readiness. So that would be one. Those would be two I might think about pretty quickly. The one on the right, maybe a little more advanced, but we have some tutorials that you could certainly do, and you don't have to do what's on that screen. But that's a piece of software that I'm really buying into recently called Pear Deck. There's a free version of this. I would recommend you start with the free version and see how it works for you. But the best way to say it, Pear Deck is clickers on steroids that you can push a series of questions to students' devices, whether it be an iPhone. So even if you don't have devices, your kids could bring an iPad, they could bring a tablet, an Android, maybe you have 4 computers in your classroom. You can begin to push out presentations that will appear on their screen. You can embed links. You're going to have kids read things. They can watch YouTube videos directly in there. They can do short, extended responses. You can have quick questions. So if you're someone who needs to present, but you want to blur the line between assessment and lecture, this is the tool for you. If you've presented with PowerPoint, it's clicking buttons. So it's similar to that. And there's tutorials. I think that's something you could pull in this week. I know we presented this at a conference on Saturday and got tweets from 3 people that were using that software on Monday in their classrooms. So I think I'm going to put it out there and say in 30 minutes, if you watch the tutorial, you could have a Pear Deck made in 30 minutes for class on Monday.
And I think with all of these examples, the real key and the goal is for any teacher, whether you're in PE in elementary school or you're a high school AP chemistry teacher, it's the engagement. You need to get your kids doing more. And that's a power and a control shift for me as a lecturer, the sage on the stage, the person with all the knowledge, to my students who have Google and have Web 2.0 where there is information. And are we teaching kids how to filter that information so that we can do the small group work and other things like that? So as we start to wrap up a little bit here, just go through, what does a typical class period look like in the middle of the year in your room?
Well, I think there's a slide, so we can pull it up, and I'll briefly, this is kind of what's
Is there? I don't even remember.
Yeah, right, well, right there.
You want this one? Okay.
Yeah, so this is a typical classroom activity that's going on in my room right now. Not this particular one, but as you can see, we're using the flip model right off the start.
Sure.
So there's a series of essential questions or essential concepts the kids are trying to think through. This is called autonomous mastery learning, is the way we describe this. So kids are able to go through this quest. Now and Mike and I talked about this originally, we used the format of a web quest because it was a model we could grab hold of, but we totally changed it for 21st century. In this case, you have this flip teaching. The next thing is while they're listening to the flip teaching, there is a computer side.
It's hard to know where it is behind
right
me.
here.
There you go. It's over Garth's shoulder.
There is a computer side.
I feel like a weatherman sometimes.
You know, I don't know if that's a live link, Mike, if you can push it or not, but if it is, or if it's a screenshot, I'm not sure if it is or not.
I forget. I might have live linked it.
So if he scrolls down and he clicks that, as they're listening to the computer side chat, the student has the ability to go through a series of questions. Let me make this very clear. These are knowledge-based questions. This is not meant to be higher level. It's meant to be flipped. Did you get what you needed to learn from this? The kids then submit that, and without me doing anything, they get an automatic reply of an email telling them exactly what their score was, what questions they got right and they missed. If kids come into my room and they already have that done, they move on. If kids don't have that done, then they have to do that. So that might mean 10 kids are doing that listening and doing. I'm working with 4 or 5 kids about a concept they don't understand. As they scroll down, they move through a series of questions and kind of see the play of how this goes. They're building DGO resources by sharing collaboratively with the kids at Chardon and now at Dublin. They're doing a blog, and they're doing a mastery quiz. So they can move at their own pace through this. That's that concept of mastery learning. So they're moving through mastery learning, which allows somebody like Mike, superstar in the classroom. He is a great reader. He's vivacious.
It's like you know me.
He wants to get home, and he wants to do his work and be done. So Mike might there's 10 quests here. Mike might have all 10 quests done when the majority of the kids are on quest 5.
Sure.
That leaves Mike the ability to do passion projects, things that the only rubric I give for that is do you add value to history? And almost all the major projects on the online textbook came from that.
Yep.
Do you add value to history? There's no grade. You've shown mastery of content. Move on. And there are multiple things on there. I know the question came up about special ed students. We have probably 15 different things that special ed students have created that they have passion for, and we're able to put on that online textbook with a vote of the students saying this is good work that should be shared with other people. So all of our students are finding ways to excel. Our artists, if you look, there are pages with art all over them. There's political cartoons. There's music videos being made. There's documentaries. They're using Minecraft. They're using ThingLink. So they're going to their resource. I'm a visual learner. I want to build a cool ThingLink to share this information with other students. So we're kind of opening the door for kids to be able to leave their own footprints of what education means to them inside the structure that we're forced to live in.
What's the parent take on this? I mean, we're publishing 12-year-old students to the web. You're not grading much work. That's a lot of kids and a lot of places. I know right behind my shoulder you can see that's one of those student videos with 98,000 hits on it. What are parent-teacher conferences like? When parents come in or when they email you, is it concerns? Are they excited?
Well, I hate to put it to you and make you feel bad, but the worst was when you decided to leave the classroom. There was a huge outpouring of I wouldn't say anger, but disappointment by parents.
Sure.
They saw this as like this lifeline for some of their kids in the classroom. They saw this as the thing their kids were most engaged with. I have not gotten any complaints from what we do. No parent in 9 years has ever questioned how we're doing this. And you know, even on our professional blog, there's been a lot of parents who have emailed me, and I've requested, could I share your email? Because if a parent takes the time to email, you know, and they're long emails, talking about how it's fundamentally changed their kids and how they're totally different at home now and how they use the web differently. Because I think that's the other thing that we never really talked about is that digital footprints up there. We are constantly teaching kids about, they know how to download games, they know how to watch videos on YouTube. Yeah. But what they don't know how to do is to learn from that material and then build their own content. They're no longer consuming information, they become the constructor of information. They become the teacher. And so they're leaving behind these digital footprints. The other kids can look at and say, that kid last year made a catapult in his garage for no grades and no credits and then brought it to school so we could see it. Yeah, he did. And so then the next year, kid's like, well, then I'm going to go
what am I going to do?
I'm going to make a printing press. And so we have a working printing press in my classroom that a kid made last year for no grades or no credit.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing each other and they're following in their footsteps. So we're teaching this whole concept of digital ethics and digital legacy and how that's going to play out as they progress.
Yep.
And I'll go so far to say, make a comment about the kid with the video here. You know, he's got 100,000 views. He'll have 100,000 views at the end of this month.
Yeah, the way it's been
He's going
progressing.
to apply to college and can literally apply that my documentaries, and he has 2 or 3.
Yeah.
His documentaries he made in 7th grade will have over 250,000 views.
Yeah.
And there's college professors arguing about the logistics and what's right and wrong in those videos.
And I should say, too, at Chardon, because it's 2 very different dynamics of communities, I think, between Beachwood and Chardon, I was really nervous about bringing technology in because we didn't have technology and publishing students. And I never got a single parent that didn't sign off or didn't think it was a good idea to allow their kids to participate in this and to keep going. So it really, I mean, everyone benefits. And I think they see that you're thinking, when you look at that Bloom's taxonomy, what you're doing in class is above and beyond where those tests are going to be at, SLOs, I don't care what it is. And if you teach above that test, then I think you're still preparing kids. So some final questions for you here, Garth, for today. These are my final 5 I'm going to ask everyone.
I'm going to ask make one statement here.
Okay,
because I think that's something else that I think teachers could make a huge change by not thinking about tomorrow, but to start thinking about next year and start to think about where are we going to be in 5 years. To have some strategic plan, because that's how that book all started. Okay, we want to engage kids in content, and this is our 5 to 7 year vision of where we're going to go. And it gave us something that we had passion for.
Sure.
And then as teachers with passion, and you're excited and you want to do unique things, that fundamentally changes the way your kids see what you're doing. They're not just doing another worksheet. They're going to change what's going on in education. And that is, I think, something teachers can begin to think about, is to begin to look at the bigger picture. What are the goals? Because if you look at the Common Core, and the only thing I reference in my classroom is I have the portrait of a graduate hanging up.
Yeah.
And I say, that's what we're trying to achieve, kids. Because when you graduate, I want you to be doing all those things. And I think for most of my kids, they're doing it in 7th grade.
So that's a good one for something that needs to change immediately. I think the teachers need to revisit or relook at the idea of a long-term goal, or that class is more than 40 minutes or 1 year.
I would say publishing.
Yeah.
Teachers should begin to publish kids' work. Whether they have a website that they publish best work on, they get a Twitter feed and have the parents sign up. Maybe they get a reminder, so they're only sending work to the parents and they don't have to worry about the broader audience. But you need to find a way to bring other people in and to show the work, the good work and the amazing things kids do. We hear so much about the negative. We need to see what is actually going on in classrooms, because there are amazing things happening in every classroom in Ohio.
Now, what's one thing that you think is great in education right now and that should stay the same?
Well,
that's a trick question for the day.
It is tricky. I taught at the university for a while. That's a really hard one for me. I see lots and lots of things I want to see changed.
Sure.
I think that I guess what I would say is I still see great kids in our schools who are trying to do the best they can in situations that maybe can be changed by others. Again, I'm in my room, so I don't get out to see what else is going on in their classrooms. But what I see on Twitter, there are amazing teachers doing amazing things all over. And I guess maybe this is what I need to say. They need to continue to share that on Twitter. Okay. They need to consider to do those things on blogs so that other people can see this stuff is happening around us. You know, it could be the school next door. And for some people, it's the person down the hall that you don't know they're doing it.
Yeah, we don't want you to ignore your building. Sure,
that and what's going on, because there's a lot going on that I don't think we know about.
What's one long-term career goal? Something that by the time you retire in 10 years, 15 years, 80 years. Sorry, I don't keep up with the STRS stuff. So 13, 18 years. What's one long-term goal that you'd like to accomplish or that you've set?
I guess I have 2 long-term goals. I said one, I hope that when I'm getting ready to retire, that I have the passion and the drive and the excitement for teaching kids as I have right now.
Okay.
Because I think once you lose that, then you're just a space holder.
Yeah.
I think the second thing that I really want to see is if I can continue to see kids do the things that I've seen in the last 10 years, of which we didn't talk about nearly any of these major things I've seen kids do. If I can see kids continue to do that through my career, that's all I need. because my legacy will now carry on through those kids and what they choose to do in life.
Yeah.
And my own kids and what they will choose to do in life. And I think I'm giving them skills that no matter whether they're a college professor of history, which very few kids will be, or whether they go out and play a pro sport, I'm teaching them skills they can use in real life. And I think that's what school's about. And I'm using my content to do it.
Yeah. How about one goal for the end of this school year for the kids you have now? Where do you see them at? Where do you want them to be?
I really want
With 4 months left, by the way. It's pretty close.
Okay. I really want the kids, we're doing this project with Dublin, teaching across distance, using Paradeck, using some other software to really team teach. We're doing some things that weren't possible 2 years ago. Now all of a sudden, I can project in there and push information and get feedback from kids instantaneously. I want to continue to mess with that and see how that will play out. Because for our students to see those kids and to interact with kids they're really never going to meet unless it's really a strange occurrence.
Sure.
They're 200 miles, 150 miles apart. They are being exposed to a totally different world, not content-driven. We're pushing content, but they're learning about a broader world and what's possible and how even interviews are going and how all of a sudden now you can interview over distance and people can sit wherever they're sitting and watch you and I talk here.
Yeah.
This is the way it moves, and kids need to see that and they need to understand it. But quickly, if they can produce, I'm really, really hopeful because I love them. I want a new music song that becomes my new favorite one because I've had Call Me Ray.
Call Me Baby, the Black Death song that one of the kids did.
There's 5 or 6 group that really are doing some nice musical videos.
That's good.
That might end up beating them. So I'm kind of anxious to see how that plays out.
And then the final question, this is probably the hardest one for I think any passionate person, no matter what your career is. What's been the best day of your teaching career so far? And you can only pick one. Garth talks a lot.
Can I say like 10 things that are in the running and then talk about one?
You can say one and talk about the top 3. And that's all you get is top 3. I almost stumped it. I'm impressed.
If I can do 3 and I'll talk about one.
Okay.
I think here's one. I think probably meeting Mike and meeting Travis and meeting other people on Twitter has made a huge difference in my teaching career. I think I was isolated and felt alone and was trying to do things that weren't necessarily the way things were done. And I had support from administrators, I had support, but I felt very isolated. And so to find people like them on Twitter and in other social media networks gave me a tribe.
Sure.
Which kept me going. So I have to thank those people, and there are people all over my Twitter network, and those people that have offered, I had a bad day, I made a comment, and the things they send back have always helped me move forward. We need people like that. That's important. Not the best day of my teaching.
Are we getting there?
I'm trying to.
Okay. I just wondered.
Probably another one that was pretty impressive that I think the interview in LA and then going to the State House and presenting to the Ohio Senate was 2 pretty big days for students. Yeah. I didn't say much, but to watch
That's why it was good.
To watch kids interact with senators about problem-based learning they were doing in my classroom, and to basically be able to go toe-to-toe on constitutional law with a couple of aides and people was very, very impressive. Yeah. And then I think I'm going to pick the last one, and maybe this isn't, I have lots of things that run through my mind, but I'm going to have to say there was a conference that we were keynote at, and I had this thing, I was absolutely set that I wanted to take a group of kids, and I wanted them to go down and basically do this for a conference. I wanted these 12-year-old kids to come to this conference, to watch our keynote, and then to document the whole day's conference. And those kids spent, they had about, 5 to 6 hours. And at the end of that
maybe even a little less than that,
they closed the conference. Nobody got up really and spoke. But they combined it, 12 kids, made YouTube videos that summarized the conference in one day and played them for those people on the conference. They were splicing together the keynotes and mixing it back in with other things.
They did interviews. It was pretty intense.
And I think I've been to hundreds of conferences since, and I've never seen kids get to do that. And I'm like, to me, let's give kids every possible opportunity to show what they know and what they can do as learners, and to provide them with true, authentic experiences. At a real wide conference.
The stress was so real on these poor kids' faces because they knew that they had 400, 800, 600 people that were at that conference that I mean, Garth and I told them at the beginning, these kids are going to make documentaries and they're going to show them in 6 hours. And they knew that it was a room full of professionals,
And
of teachers.
and just to give you a little sense, I think they had 12 hours of footage that they filmed in about 4 hours, because there was multiple cameras.
Oh, it was pretty impressive, yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, I would say 4 times a week I go home happy I'm a teacher, because something good has happened.
That's good.
And so I can't, you can't talk about them all, but there aren't too many days that go by where I'm not like, this is a great job. I get to excite kids, get them excited about content and learning, and have them go home and do things they wouldn't do for a grade, but they'll go home and do because they want to understand. And when you can get to a place where you see kids do that, I don't know what else you can do as a teacher except try to maintain that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to wrap up, because it's a happy note that it's a lot more work, it's a lot more stress when you start to change things and try to work above the system and in it. But I think at the end of the day, I think it makes you a happier person. I think there's more product in there, and we refer back to Dan Pink and the idea of inspiration and motivation and what makes great people great. I think that's great.
And Dan Pink phrasing it, we are preparing kids for their future, not our past.
And
this is it. This is the future for kids.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I don't think kids would be able to see 2 teachers sit down and talk about what it really takes to be an influential teacher in the classroom. So this has been really great. This is our first episode, so there's definitely some things that we get to go back and reflect on, learn how to make the guests not talk so much. Just kidding. Everything is going to be housed on North's website, so NORT2H.org, on the Innovators in Education page. We already have up there today, if you're watching this live, you know this. The slides that I was showing in the background are up here. All of these slides, almost everything in here is linked to hundreds of different things that Garth talked about. I tried to make sure that everything goes to those places. The video, once we archive them, will be up here as well. So anyone can come back and watch this 24 hours, anytime during the day that you want to. And that's kind of the point, is to make sure that this is accessible when you need it. Feel free to email, tweet to the hashtag North, and we'll continue to respond. I appreciate the tweets that came in. We had a couple people that actually tweeted us, so that's pretty good for a first episode. Again, I'd like to thank the Nord Foundation, Nord Family Foundation, for the grant that really allowed us to do this in this awesome studio that we have here in North and Lorraine County ESC. And thank our guest, Garth Holman at Beachwood Schools, for letting him out for the day to work on this. And we will see you next time on Innovators in Education.
Thank you. Thank you, Nord. And thank you to North and Mike. Appreciate it.
Well, I do what I can.